Hello everyone, thank you for joining. I see the familiar faces, familiar names I should say. We'll just wait for a few seconds till more people will join and till we welcome our guest. Just a few minutes. Hello. Oh, hello, Christian. You need to request me. Okay. Christian is joining in a second. I just invited him.
There we go. Hello, Olga.
How are you, Christian? So good to see you.
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm okay. Can you see and hear me well?
Absolutely, just perfect. Just perfect, yeah.
That's great. How was your weekend?
Lovely little floral arrangement behind you there.
Oh, you know, they're wilting flowers. You know, I'm very partial about flowers, so I never, you know, they're living organisms, so I never like to throw them away till they really have to be thrown away till the
Well,
very
then they turn into potpourri, don't they?
Well, some of them, yes.
That's one of the great advantages of living here in Singapore, always being able to fill our homes with lots of beautiful flowers and orchids and things.
Yeah, that's true. Although I must say that these flowers that you see in the background, they're all from Europe. They all were flown in from Europe, so they're not really tropical or local flowers. So they don't, they survive for a certain period of time, and they're very difficult to replicate.
I see, not so sustainable. Well, no, my weekend was good. How about you?
Oh, good. Well, I actually very busy weekend. I had to submit a proposal, so it's just been a bit of
yeah, you had some big events last week, I think, didn't you?
Yes, I had back to back, but you know, it's very, very nice to see the life coming back to Singapore and people enjoying themselves, and for me to be in my element, as I say, because I strive when I'm work and I strive when I'm busy. So it was good to be back in this kind of a mood and vibe and experience this vibe. So yes, then the events went very well.
Absolutely. For the festive season, it's good to be able to get out a little bit once again and socialize just a little bit.
Exactly. So Christian, I will do a very, very short introduction. Please. And then I'll do my series, and then I will introduce you. And I have to tell you that there's so many points of conversation and so many things that I wanted to talk to you that I actually had to write a little bit of the notes for myself, because there are just so many interesting subjects that I want to touch. So you will have to excuse me if I glance here and there a little bit, okay?
Not at all. No problem.
Okay, so welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. I know that it's pre-dinner time, and for some of you in Europe, it might be pre-lunch time, but nevertheless, you're all joining us, and thank you very much. Just a few words about the series of conversation with Olga. I have started conversations with Olga during the lockdown, of course, and it's an Igtv series fostering intellectual and cultural exchange between influential individuals, my friends from all over the world. All my friends, they're amazing, and they're sharing their personal life stories in hopes to inspire and cultivate a more diverse and inclusive communities and share their thoughts. So it is my honor today to introduce to you my guest for the episode number 5, Christian Barker, the founding editor-in-chief of the Rake magazine, thebillionaire.com. Christian has written about luxury lifestyle, fashion, culture, travel, watches, business for publications including Forbes Asia, Travel and Leisure, the Financial Times, Esquire, Tatler, GQ, Channel News Asia, CNBC, and the South China Morning Post, among others. I have known Christian for many years, Christian, but while we are living in Singapore, but I have never really had spoken to you in depth about the media and the business ethics in this field. So today is my chance, today is your chance to reply to me as well. So we're going to dive right in, and you know, there is a lot of controversy and a lot of touchy matters about the media then, and especially these days. So let's talk about the state of the media these days. What are your thoughts
thank you, Olga.
on the
I just want to say it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me. So but yeah, the hunter becomes the hunted. Normally, it's me interviewing people. So yeah, fire away, do your worst.
See, now you feel how the tables have switched. This
exactly.
Yeah. So, what are your thoughts on business of glossy magazines? You've been working for and with glossy magazines for so many years, and how do you feel about when everything is digitalized these days?
Yeah, well, it's I mean, it's interesting. It's you know, in a way, to have worked in this business during a period of huge transformation. You know, so I kind of got into media and working in publications in the I think it was 1999, so you know, the turn of the century. And it was really, you know, it was around that time. I think it was sort of 97, 98 when, you know, most of us really started to have access to the internet in its earliest stages, and when that really started coming through. So, you know, my entire career in media, I have really worked across both digital platforms, although they were, you know, they were a lot, you know, it used to be that your focus was the print publication, and that the digital properties were, I guess, a supplement to that. And I guess, now we've seen over the last couple of decades that situation is really reversed, where the print publication, I guess, is there as more of a nice to have, and the digital side of things is really the essential. So yeah, I guess.
But do you prefer to actually read paper magazines or digital copies? For example, to be honest with you, for me, I love reading books, but I love to hold the book in my hands, and you know, it's just sort of feel the paper. Tell me, how do you feel about the reading the actual magazines versus digital?
I think there are really advantages to both. You know, I'm you know, a classicist in the sense that I've got a storage unit in Australia that I've barely visited over the last sort of 20 years. That is full of old vinyl records, compact discs, books, magazines, going right back to the.
You have the vinyls as well.
A couple of thousand vinyl records.
God, I love vinyls.
Yeah. So I love all of that analog stuff, and I love all my, you know, much to my wife's chagrin, I refuse to part with a lot of these old, you know, physical copies of magazines and books and music and so forth. But at the same time, you know, I resisted for years getting an iPod, and then when I did, I loved the fact that I could suddenly, you know, be carrying around basically my entire record or music collection in my pocket. Right. And the same goes for Spotify. You know, I love the fact that with streaming, I can access, you know, virtually any piece of music that's been made ever in all of history, and that something will spring to your mind, and you can immediately find that just at the press of a button, rather than having to sift through thousands of records and have those in alphabetical order or genre order or whatever it may be. So, you know, there's a big advantage to that. And you know, I love the fact with my Kindle now that when I read about a great book, I can immediately go in and simply, you know, buy and download it straight away. Whereas in the past, I used to kind of try to make a note and then I'd forget about it and I'd go and visit the bookstore. So yeah, look, there's really advantages to both, but there is something beautiful about a printed, physical product.
Holding the product. So by sort of looking into what you just said, do you think that actually the magazines will eventually be an outdated concept, or you still see them being this touch and feel important?
I think that I've been saying for quite a number of years that they're probably going to go in two directions. You'll have, on the one hand, something that's very disposable, that is very sort of throwaway, though you know, those are kind of disappearing as well. And then on the other hand, you'll have something that really is, you know, virtually a collector's item, a coffee table book. It is of a very, very high quality, and that's you know, from the Rake, that was what we tried to create with that, a magazine that would be approaching.
Rake is really one of my old favorites, and I think
thank you.
And quality is amazing, and just the content is great. Yeah, but we'll talk about it a bit later. Yes.
But no, but that's what a lot of people, you know, have said, that they have kept that. I did the same thing with the magazine, the print magazine that we did with Billionaire.com. It was you know, it was hardback, cloth-bound, coffee table book sort of quality. So I think that's maybe where it's going to go. That's if you're doing a print product, you do it at that, and particularly
they will vanish. These magazines will definitely become collector's items. That's for sure. Who knows? We might have to auction them one day. The auction. Yeah. Well,
but I also think the thing about a print magazine of that nature is it's really curated. You know, you've got a collection of stories and material that whenever I put those together, you go to it's almost like cooking a meal. You know, you go to this huge amount of trouble to make sure that the entree is perfect and the amuse-bouche is perfect, and then you've got this beautiful sort of meaty, hefty section in the middle, and then something sweet to finish with, and it's a self-contained thing, whereas putting content onto a website is a very different process, because it is kind of, you know, it's a bunch of random stories that you as a reader can be led off various different different routes, unlike flicking through a magazine where...
Yeah, exactly. I assume the process of creating the digital magazine versus paper magazine probably must be very different. I don't know, but I assume.
Yeah, because with a printed product, you're forced to flick through from page 1 to page 200, whatever it is, and look at it as I, as an editor, or someone else as an editor has chosen to force you to do it. Whereas online, it's much more up to you, the user.
Well, great. Well, now I'm going to really move into something really kind of touchy subjects. You know, what are your sentiments about, in general, media? How do you feel about the statement that you can't trust the media, especially these days, especially during this year, about COVID-19, about the elections and all the different tragedies, unfortunately, that happen around the world? What is your take on it? What is your take, basically, about the fake media? I will move into some of the more questions about it in this area, but I'm just giving you a start.
No, of course. I think the very funny thing is that most people who sort of say, oh, you can't trust the media and the media is full of lies, that their chosen media outlets are the ones that are most full of lies and are most full of falsehoods and quote unquote fake news. That is quite amusing. You know, most people who go into media, who want to become journalists, who want to become editors, you know, it's not for the money, it's not for the glamour. They want to do it for the right reasons. They want to tell the truth.
Well, that's the main part. I want to know how, basically, what are your thoughts on the integrity of the journalists, and how do they perceive this career? Because to be a journalist, by definition, on my opinion, you have to be truthful, and you have to sort of look into the truth rather than interpret it in any way that is politically manipulated a bit.
Yeah, look, I hesitate to speak for broadsheets, hard-hitting investigative journalists, because I generally write about a lot more superficial sort of stuff. It's the world isn't going to hinge on a story I've written about, matching your shirt and your tie, or the relative quality of a particular holiday destination or restaurant, or whatever it may be. But yeah, most people go into this field because they have a passion for storytelling, but for exposing real stories and for telling the truth. And I think that it's an incredibly important role to be fulfilled, to to have people out there who are exposing wrongdoing, whether that's in the government, or whether that's in corporations, or whatever other area it may be, and also just reporting on what's happening in other parts of the world, so that we don't have a parochial, small town sort of mindset. So it's a very important function that media and that journalists fulfill. Unfortunately, it's just the industry in general, it's becoming harder and harder to monetize it, and for publications to earn the amount of money that is required to have to sustain a great team of full-time journalists, photographers, editors, copy editors, all of the other job roles that need to be fulfilled. So that's the complicated thing, is that unfortunately media outlets are dealing with a big crunch in how much revenue they make, and when that happens, that does cause compromises.
Okay. Well, that brings me to probably, I don't want to put you in any uncomfortable situation, so I just want to ask probably the last question about the in general media, and then we move on to another subject. So on your opinion, should journalists remain in the position of providing the facts, or they try to evoke change in the thought process in people, and they try to change, or they should try to change the mindset in a sense? Because this is what I see happening.
Yeah, look, in a way, what writers or written journalists do, it's very similar to photojournalists. So you're telling a story, or you're describing something that has happened, and that is going to be viewed through your particular lens. So there is always going to be an element of personal perspective to it, just in the same way that a photographer taking a photograph, you can have two photographers standing right next to each other photographing exactly the same thing, and have two very, very different photographs. In the same way, two journalists will describe the same thing happening in perhaps just a slightly different way. I think it's most important to tell the truth about what is happening and what is going on. But if you see something that is wrong, and that you disagree with, and that you feel people need to be told that this is wrong and this shouldn't happen, then you've got to do that. And that's the only way that that we start to think differently, and that the population in general starts to have to move on and evolve. 100 years, 200 years ago, we didn't think that women should be able to vote, or that they should have careers, or the general thinking was very racist, sexist, misogynist, and in no small part that's moved on because of people telling those stories and explaining why that's wrong.
So obviously there is an influence.
Yeah.
Great. Well,
influencing is important. Yes.
Yes. Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Well, we're moving into the very sort of broad subject, and yet very into your face subject of social media and branding.
Okay.
What is your take on business of expressing opinions in social media? You know, it seems to me that we are all forced to use social media more than ever due to COVID and due to us either, you know, trying to express ourselves and express our opinions. And what do you think about how vital do you think the social media is?
I think it's, you know, it's inextricably, you know, interwoven in our lives now. It would be very hard to kind of cut that cord and go entirely off social media.
Do you restrain yourself? Do you restrain the kids to be on social media?
Yeah, look, it's interesting. I've just written I just wrote a story about it last week, which is yet to be published, but that was about you know, how much we should or should not be using social media. And there was a study a couple of years ago that did come to the conclusion that by reducing social media use to less than 30 minutes a day, or to roughly 30 minutes a day and not exceeding that amount, it decreased depression, increased feelings of well-being. You know, I think there are a lot of things about social media that perhaps you know, do make a lot of people feel a lot of FOMO and you know, feel less good about themselves and feel envious or so it's, and a lot of it's unreality. You know, there are some photographs that I've got on my social media page which are from some of the most miserable days of my life, but because there's blue skies and I'm sitting on a boat or whatever, I seem to be happier than I actually was. So a lot of social media is
that's a question about authenticity, isn't it, and honesty as well. And it's very you know, it contradicts itself sometimes. But whatever you express on the social media and whatever is actually happening in your real life, and I think this is something that we all have to be aware of.
Yeah, and it's also, you know, it's very easy to see something on social media, and I think, you know, we've still got this lingering perception that if something is in the media in its broader sense, that it's probably true. So, you know, I think that's what a lot of people are holding a lot of misguided beliefs now, because they see something, a meme on social media that, you know, purports to some sort of fact, alternative fact, which is actually completely BS, which is completely false. But because it's in the media and it seems to look authentic, or it's on a website that looks kind of authentic enough, people can easily be fooled into believing it. You know, whereas that used to be, again, if you picked something up and it was in a newspaper, you had a certain guarantee that at least, you know, that had gone through a number of filters, and that it was probably, you know, pretty certain to be true. Now, you know, I don't know, seeing something on social media, seeing a meme and believing what that says, but a lot of people do. So I don't know, does that go back to your question?
Yes, more or less. I think authenticity is very important. I also feel that yes, the FOMO effect that you mentioned is extremely, I think it's a jeopardy for the health, to be honest with you. So yes. And that actually brings me to another question about influencers. What do you think of the idea of the influencers, and whether they will be ever outdated? Because influencers today tend to be more of an advertising platform for the brands, and rather than expressing their own authentic selves. And I think it's, I think a number of people, or at least some people whom I know personally, are being turned off by it. So what is your take on it?
Yeah, it's a real blurring of lines, because when the whole sort of influencer thing started out with people like Chiara Ferrani and whatnot, I think that their audiences, you know, identified with them and believed in them, and they were compelling as salespeople for products, because it was, as you say, coming from a place of legitimacy and authenticity, where they would be saying, "Hi guys, I use this type of makeup and I find that it makes my face look radiant, and perhaps you should try it too if you're like me." Whereas now it's all very much purely financially driven. But look, you know, at the same time, I liken it to glossy publications in a way, which this will come as a shock to some people, but glossy publications are generally nicer to the brands that advertise with them than they are to brands that don't advertise with them. So, you know, there is a certain, you know, you will get probably a lot more editorial support in a publication if you are an advertiser with that publication. That said, in my days as an editor, I would often have our ad sales guys come to us and say, you know, brand X, let's say brand X, for, you know, has come to us and, you know, wants to book in some advertising. Can we then give them some editorial support? Yes. And if that brand is a good fit for the magazine, which they should be if they want to advertise with you, then that shouldn't be a problem. You know, they should be the right type of product and the right grade of product and the right type of thing for your reader. But there have been many instances in my career when I've had to say, "Sorry guys, we're just going to have to say no. I don't think.
Whoops.
I don't think the ad should be in this publication. I don't think it's right for us. And there's absolutely no way that I can do some editorial coverage for these guys in a credible way without us losing our editorial credibility with our readers." So, you know, you've got to be careful to maintain the trust and the belief of your audience. And I think, you know, that's exactly the same thing whether you're, you know, doing a partnership with your social media, or whether you're, you know, overseeing a publication. You have to ensure that anything that, you know, that comes into your world, and anything that you give your stamp of approval to and say, you know, this is good, that you truly do believe in it.
And that brings me to another question. How do you, when it comes to branding, how do you envision to attract the more of a younger generation? How do you appeal to younger generations with sort of flashy lifestyles, or maybe less flashy lifestyles? And or you think that advertising in general is still more of a traditional, is geared more toward the traditional audiences?
At the moment, you know, everyone seems to be going for the, you know, the super youthful sort of TikTok market, which from a visual or from an advertising creative point of view is gravitating towards, I guess, raw and less polished imagery, and you know, that strikes them as real, and that almost seems like something amateurish, that almost seems like something that was created by, you know, one of their 18-year-old friends, rather than a, you know, a middle-aged guy running an advertising agency, or you know, the 50-year-old CEO of a major European luxury company. That's what they're looking for, and that's what speaks to them. However, you know, what strikes me as interesting and sometimes baffling is that, you know, if you're a luxury brand and you're selling, let's say, $30,000 watches, how many of your customers are actually 18-year-old kids who are on TikTok?
Exactly.
And how many of them are actually a little bit more, you know, are a little bit more mature and are looking for something that's a bit more polished? I think there's a huge scramble at the moment to tap this very large market of millennial, Generation Z, etc., and younger. but and you know, they're very big in numbers, but I think for the moment, perhaps their spending power, yeah, they might be able to buy that, you know, $500 t-shirt. I don't know how. I didn't have money to buy a $500 t-shirt when I was 15.
Yeah.
But, you know, maybe they can buy the $500 t-shirt, but there's certainly, or you know, or perhaps buy the lipstick or the fragrance or you know, those entry-level items from a brand. But, you know, when it comes to the kind of big ticket items, I think perhaps it's short-sighted just be saying, okay, this is a big block of the population, we need to be targeting these guys, when yeah, it's probably more Generation X and maybe the older millennials who have actually got the wherewithal to invest in these products. So
yes, exactly, and that's actually that's, you know, I want to chat with you a little bit about the lifestyle. This is exactly how the question comes: is how do you convey the right message to of the luxury lifestyle, and then not just to the affluent classes, but you know, throughout the masses, throughout the different levels of the people, because luxury is very subjective, I would say, and how to show that actually luxury, anybody can have luxury, just how you interpret the notion of the luxury, and how do you create this awareness, and how do build appreciation for it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, our concept of luxury has changed a lot over the last couple of decades. I think, you know, it's not that whole Donald Trump, you know, it's not about gold faucets in your bathroom and you know, everything covered in gold and bling bling. You know, it has become a lot more, you know, well, you know, what a lot of the sort of, you know, the barefoot luxury and things that are a lot more about experiences. Exactly. Yeah. Well, I think social media has done that a lot, has made, you know, people less looking to, you know, accumulate possessions and more focused on accumulating the fantastic memories and things that, you know, part of that is because, you know, a memory will stay with you forever, whereas a possession, you know, perhaps it's fleeting, and perhaps it's something that will only give you joy for a short space of time, but a memory will stay with you for the rest of your life, particularly if it's, you know, a precious memory that you've shared with your family. You
Absolutely.
know,
that's why the whole, and this is exactly what I do. I try and I create the memories. And this is a luxury to me to be able to create the memory. And it's actually a luxury for people to embrace this memory. And to me, it's a luxury. And moving into still within the luxury, what is your take on men's luxury lifestyle? What is the luxury lifestyle for men these days? And how do you define, actually goes into another question, how do you define masculinity in 21st century?
Oh God, that's a tricky one. I'll take the first part of it first.
Okay, sure.
So I think, especially over the last decade, you know, with and a lot of this happened because of the global financial crisis in 2008. I think that we saw a real sort of turnaround there with guys who had been very focused on, you know, very capricious of the moment fashion, you know, fashion that's in 1 minute and out the next, to, you know, refocusing upon, you know, perhaps instead of buying 5 very fashionable outfits, to, you know, really investing in, you know, 1 beautiful bespoke suit or 1 beautiful pair of shoes that were kind of handmade for them and that are probably going to last them, you know, 20 or 30 years. And in some cases that you can pass on to the next generation. So it really went from quantity to quality, and to a new focus on things that were specifically, you know, a lot of the time specifically made for you, and that you had some sort of input into that, into whether it's just personalization or whether whether it's just personalized or whether it's completely bespoke. So I think there was a big sort of change around 2008, 2010 to a focus on that, and then over the last decade, you know, men, you know, and I'm talking kind of men's style, has perhaps, that, you know, there was a big resurgence then 10 years ago in sort of classic men's style. So, you know, suits and ties and tailoring and things. That then segued into more of a casual approach. And I hate the word athleisure, but, you know, into more casual attire, but still with an appreciation for things
for
that
the
were
craftsmanship and quality.
Yeah, craftsmanship and quality, and buying less but better. So I think that's been the big change, and I think that definitely remains. Someone said shorter pants. That's true as well. But yeah, so I think that was kind of the big change in that area, and I think that appreciation really remains. So, you know, on the other hand, you still have, and you know, Instagram is full of this, the sort of guy who's got the particular watch and the particular car.
Well, that brings me that brings me into the kind of a comment, or perhaps a question. What, you know, about the toxic masculinity? And what is what does it mean for you? How can you describe it? And is there anything that you can tell me about it, and that there is something that you dislike and cannot stand about it? And just yes, I want to know a little bit more. What do you feel about this notion? It's very well sort of, it's spoken a lot. A lot of people talk about it. And what is the what is your describe your confidence, and how do you differentiate between the fake masculinity and confidence in yourself?
Yeah,
I'm talking about men, by the way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, you know, there's an old saying that the empty vessel makes the most noise, and I think that's absolutely true, and it's something that I've always found in my interactions with you know, groups of males, that you'll often find that there's, you know, the guys who are trying hardest to sort of thump their chest and be King Kong and be the alpha male in a group and exert themselves and sort of push people around. I think that just really belies a lack of self-confidence and a lack of self-assurance. And it's often the person who is sort of sitting back and raising an eyebrow and you know, questioning that behavior that possibly is the most confident and assured man in the room. You know, we were given 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. I think it's often better to sit back and listen rather than try to bleat and blather the whole time. So yeah, I think we've still got a lot of kind of King Kong loud mouths.
With the personality, I think also issues, and you know, the matter of securities or insecurities, and I think it all comes like for all of us, I guess. So what are your preferences, and what are your favorites when it comes to trends in men's fashion?
Well, sorry, Olga, if I could just jump back to that.
Yes, absolutely.
I also think that you know, in my home country, Australia, where I haven't lived for a long time, but you know, Australia is renowned as a very sort of macho, low-key culture.
Low-key, very super low-key.
Yeah. So, but you know, we've and the various Australian governments have been doing. Introducing a lot of measures to try to reduce kind of random violence in the streets and guys having, you know, going out and drinking a bunch of beers and having a fight with each other. And have been trying to do that by you know, shutting down bars and things at a certain time of the night. And it's been really ineffective. And, you know, in my opinion, changing those sorts of attitudes and changing the attitudes of guys from that toxic masculinity of, you know, needing to be really macho and thinking
macho,
that
exactly, the pseudo macho.
Well, thinking that it's a cool thing to go out and have a fight on a Saturday night rather than enjoy yourself. It's a mindset change, and it's a generational change, and it's something that is going to take a while for that mindset to change. So that is something that I think is great about the way, gender sort of gender norms are now changing, and that we're getting more open to a different interpretation of what it means to be a man. So the men
becoming a little bit more metrosexual, perhaps.
Well, just a bit less like baboons would be a good thing.
Yeah, great. And what Christmas is coming. What would be your suggestion to have for the gifts for the men in our lives these days?
I always think that, a gift is always great to get someone something that they possibly wouldn't buy for themselves.
Yes.
And I always think it's best to spend money on something that will get frequent use and that will preferably get better with age, that will, the most expensive things that you buy are the things that you never use.
Yeah, but very true.
I think, I don't know, for instance, if the guy is a cigarette smoker, I gave up many years ago, and it's a terrible habit. I don't encourage that habit, but a beautiful cigarette lighter is something that probably a guy would be unlikely to buy for himself, but buy a beautiful lighter, sterling silver lighter from Dunhill, and have his initials, his monogram engraved on there. Something beautiful like that. A number of years ago, this
fork element is always present. I guess it seems to me that is quite an important component, isn't it?
Yeah, or just in a similar vein, one of the greatest presents that my wife has ever bought me was a set of onyx and silver tuxedo studs, which
Beautiful.
you don't wear them.
You cannot go wrong with that. That's for sure.
Well, you don't wear them every day, but it's not something that I would necessarily rush out and have bought for myself. But it was whenever I do wear a tuxedo, they come out, and I think of the thought that she put into that. So yeah, something precious. And
that can basically become a heirloom at one point, and then you can pass it on. For sure.
Exactly.
I totally agree. Well, thank you. And we will jump into a little bit of a personal and about your ambitions perhaps as well. You have told me that you wanted to be the war correspondent. What changed your mind, and what assignment you must have had in life at that early days that made you abandon that part of your life?
It was all very much happenstance, Olga. I don't know. I actually started my career. I fell into a job in the music industry, working for a couple of different record companies, because that was what I was really passionate about in my early 20s. Going out and spending 3 nights a week in the nightclubs and listening to house music, listening to electronic music. So I was really passionate about that. And because that was my passion, I guess that helped me get a job in that field. And then, when I then decided I wanted to go back into being a journalist, being in media, which is something I'd wanted to be since I was probably, a little boy, I don't know, 12, whatever.
You're very lucky that you had a dream and you follow it.
Well, I wanted to be Superman as well as a little boy, but didn't manage that one. So when I did go into media, I guess, the field that I had been working in, which was music, that allowed me to have some sort of domain expertise in that area, which, that just set me off on the track into entertainment publications. And then I started, writing for magazines like GQ Australia, doing interviews with sort of musicians and sports stars, movie stars, etc. And progressed into where I am now. So look, I could have very easily, if I'd had the opportunity to work for a different media outlet, could have gone into that area. But look, I'm quite happy reporting from the front lines of 5-star luxury rather than Yeah,
So that actually brings me
fire.
to the question. So if you would be given a dream project to do, what would be your dream project in the field of journalism?
That's an interesting question. Look, I think the next big project of that nature that I would like to work on is something as a coffee table book. And
okay. It reminds me, I have to give you a copy of my coffee table book.
Yes, you do. Yes,
yes,
well,
and I'll sign it for you. Save the date. Yes, I will do it.
You've beaten me to it. It's something I feel you know, a lot of guys I know have got, you know, one or two or several coffee table books out there in the sort of men's style field. Though I actually am, you know, strongly considering doing something going back to what I was just talking about, my old field of interest of, you know, DJs and the whole world of the nightclub. Because I think I think that's something that'll be interesting to revisit. Of sort of my era of that, which was too long ago to mention without showing my age. But yeah, doing something.
I will not touch on that subject. I promise you.
Yeah,
it's not good for me especially.
So I'd like to do. And I did work on I edited a coffee table book many years ago when we started out the rate, called Hand of the Artisan, which was a beautiful coffee table book that was all devoted to Italian craftsmanship, looking at everything from shoemakers to sort of Lamborghini furniture makers like Poltrona Frau, etc. So yeah, I think it's been enough of a pause between drinks for me to go back and do something in the coffee table book realm.
That's actually, that actually brings me, you mentioned the publications that you've started and you basically founded. So I actually wanted to ask you about it. What were your struggles when you first started the August Man, and what are the differences in struggles and in journey between August Man and the Rake magazine, for example?
Okay.
Since prior to them, there has not been really major men's lifestyle publication.
Yeah, I think we really changed the landscape in Singapore with August Man magazine, which you know, Jonathan Lobban, Darren Ho, and I founded back in, what was that, like 2005, I guess that was. And yeah, the main challenge there was that the publishers saddled us with this name, August Man, which was really difficult to explain to people. I guess it's become in the vernacular now, but the number of times that I had to say, no, it's not named after the month of August. It's
how do you become an August Man, actually? That's what is the criteria to become an August Man?
God, I don't know.
What were your sort of line of thoughts, and what was your main objective to start the magazine?
Well, yeah, as you know, the publishers kind of had registered that title and brought Jonathan Lobban and I aboard to create this magazine, which, you know, the word August means respectable and venerable and, you know, gentlemanly and kind of noble. So we were supposed to, you know, create something that was a little bit more mature and thoughtful than your average kind of men's magazine that was in the market at the time, a lot of which were very sort of youthful, very much aimed at a guy who was maybe 21 years of age. And the idea with August Man was to do something that was a little bit more mature minded. And I think we were all about 30 years of age and were a little bit more mature. God, that was a long time ago. So that was that was the interesting thing there. And again, it was a sort of smooth segue from that into the Rake. You know, we were doing a lot of stories in August Man which were, you know, very craftsmanship focused, where we would, for instance, you know, go to the Louis Vuitton trunk making workshop and you know, very much look at the work that goes into hand making one of those products, and why it isn't just purely about the monogram and the glossy luxury of it. It is about, you know, this history and this craftsmanship.
Exactly. So it's very educational. This is, I think, what is extremely important. This is what I love about the Rate magazine as well, that you learn so much. The educational component is very, very strong. Yeah. So that was very much, you know, the aim with that. And I remember the publisher Waco chatting with me at a party in the, you know, before we founded it, and saying, you know, I've been seeing these stories that you're doing in August Man, which are you know, very craftsmanship focused, and I'm looking at starting a publication, and you know, that really wants to focus on that side of things, and that was really what we did. You know, expanded that out from being a part of the magazine as it was with August Man to being really, you know, sort of the core focus of it with the Rake. And yeah, as I say, you know, it was at that time when sort of the zeitgeist was moving on from being sort of glossy fashion into something that was a little bit more perennial and timeless. And but look, the challenge there was, number one, 2008 was a terrible time to be launching a luxury publication, when it was not a great time for the economy and people were not spending a lot of money. So that wasn't a marvelous thing from a commercial standpoint. It was a challenge starting a magazine like that here in Singapore, which, you know, people immediately would look at it from the United States or from the UK or from Europe, and they all thought it was based in London. They all just presumed that it was coming out of the UK or perhaps the United States. Well, that's a compliment at that time, I suppose.
Absolutely.
Yes, of
absolutely.
course. Absolutely.
But yeah, so look, you know, again, you know, the whole team there, Jonathan Lobbin, myself, Waco, you know, Darius Lee, who was the art director, who really set an amazing visual identity for that. We had a photographer called Jason Lang, who's a hugely talented guy who you know, really set the visual identity for that. So and it's, I mean,
you guys had a vision, which is great.
Well,
so that brings me.
Okay, go on. Yeah.
No, that brings me to the point of legacy. What kind of a legacy would you like to leave for generations, or for, you know, for your own family, for the children, and in general? What would you like to leave behind, being in this field and in this world of publishing and of creating the stories?
You're a parent as well, Olga, and I think, you know, the most important thing is to be a good dad. I think that's my number one legacy. I want to raise a couple of upstanding human beings in the form of my daughters. That is absolutely
yes.
And it's, I mean, it's funny. I've just been writing. I've written. I'm in the process of writing a story today, which is you know, a little bit deeper than the stuff I normally write about. I've been writing a number of things for this new website called thesoothe.co, which are a little bit.
Oh, really?
A little bit heavier than what I might normally attack. And this one is about. It's about people, how people make peace with their mortality, and you know, what they're really thinking about in their final days of life. And actually, I interviewed Dr. Elaine Kim, who I'm sure you know, for this story. And look, she was really saying, you know, people are not. No one is there saying, I wish I'd spent more time in the office. I wish I'd worked harder. I wish I'd made more money.
The subject of mortality comes more and more, but in more kind of a philosophical way. You know, that the Singapore Reporters that just put up the amazing plays based on one of my favorite books, Tuesdays with Morrie. And this is, I'm sure you probably read this book, and this is about mortality, and it's about embracing, through mortality, you embrace the everyday's life. And this is, I think, the message that we all would love to convey one way or another. And
look, that said, I'd love to leave behind a couple of, a novel or two that people will read for another couple of 100 years, and that will be set, and that they'll force high school students to read one day. I don't know. Look, that would be great. But as I say, the thing that Elaine was saying is that people in their last days of life, they're really talking, wanting to spend time with their family, wanting to say to their family what they needed to say, whether that's I'm sorry, whether that's forgive me, whether that's I love you. These are the most important things. And it goes back to what we were saying before. It's about those experiences, that as a legacy. I'd like to leave behind my kids being able to say to their kids one day, oh, we had this wonderful trip to Italy when I was 11 years of age, and had this amazing time. Those sorts of stories, or be able to tell stories about me rather than be able to say this was your grandfather's watch. That'd be good too.
That's great. That's what keeps you going, I suppose, isn't it? And this is what I think the essence of everyday's life for you, isn't it? From what I can gather. Well, that's wonderful. I think this is incredible understanding of the everyday's life that is so one hand philosophical, but yet on the other hand is very real and beautiful. And I'm thanking you really, Christian, very much for joining me today and for sharing your journey, your thoughts, and your philosophy. And it's great talking to you.
It was absolutely my pleasure, Olga. Sorry, that's my dog barking.
Well, he's on timer. Great timing.
Just on time. But yeah, look, it was my pleasure. Thank you so much. I look forward to catching up in real life. Thanks to everyone who watched.
I'm going to post the conversation with Christian on the link and on Instagram, and I'm sure Christian probably you post it as well. And so whoever was not able to listen to us, I'm sure you'll enjoy listening to us at your leisure. And thank you so much, Christian, again. And I'll talk to you, and I'll see you very soon.
That was a wonderful
Happy
conversation.
holidays, in case I don't happen to see you before.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.